Vote counting gets underway following Ghana's tight election contest. How an innovative program is helping at-risk populations combat AIDS in South Africa. And Time Magazine's choice for Person of the Year kicks up controversy. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening. I'm Hayley Adams-Fitzpatrick. This is Africa 54. Vincent Makori is off today. We begin with the election in Ghana, where the main opposition is claiming victory. With vote counting still underway, the New Patriotic Party says its candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, has an unassailable lead. The NPP is calling on President John Mahama to concede defeat. The NPP says it has won 53% of the vote. That's according to its own tally. Mahama's campaign team is dismissing the claims as, quote, treasonable and irresponsible. It's accusing the opposition of trying to throw the country into chaos. The ruling party claims a comfortable lead and urges Gambians to remain calm. The Electoral Commission is now verifying results in a number of precincts and will start releasing results late Thursday. VOA's correspondent Peter Clotty is in the capital of Accra, and I spoke to him on the phone earlier about whether the opposition's claim is premature.
Well, the latest is that the main opposition party, the New Patriotic Party, held two press conferences, one at the crack of dawn and the other followed a few hours later, saying that they have won the presidential election because their internal polling and results that they have gotten from their representatives at various polling stations across the country show that they have won the presidential election. However, it is only the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, that is Madam Charlotte Osei, who is constitutionally mandated to declare who won the presidential election. For the parliamentary election, however, it is different because the results are declared at each constituency where those candidates will represent.
Peter, what has been the reaction from the president and the ruling party to the opposition's claims of victory?
The president has been largely quiet. However, the ruling party executive members came out this morning, local time in Accra, to say that they should allow the Electoral Commission to do what it needs to do to ensure every dispute is resolved before announcing the official results or certified results from the Electoral Commission. So the president has been quiet. The main opposition leader, Nana Akufo-Addo, says he will address Ghanaians in a short while.
So, Peter, what next, and how soon can we expect to get the actual and final results?
I know expectations are high. However, the law that mandates the Electoral Commission to administer elections does not specify what time frame the Electoral Commission should declare the results of the presidential election. It has been a tradition or the norm for the Electoral Commission to give or announce results of the presidential election within a 3-day period, which is approximately 72 hours. However, they can take as much time as they want to declare the results or the outcome of the presidential election. There have been reports of overvoting in that if there were 20 people on the voter list, over 30 people voted. When that happens, and it's proven that it happens, then the Electoral Commission sometimes will take a decision to invalidate that polling station result. So those are some of the reports that they have gotten. They're trying to investigate those before coming up with a decision and then announcing the results of the election. This is what they told me, Hayley.
Peter, what is the mood there right now? You spoke to many voters. What are people telling you? What are they expecting?
Well, some people are throwing some suspicion at the Electoral Commission. Some are saying that they can't believe what is going on. Some are saying that, well, they are waiting for the Electoral Commission to come out to declare who won the presidential election. But there is high expectation among Ghanaians expecting the Electoral Commission to declare the results.
Peter, do you foresee any violence should this, what already seems like a protracted process, drag out a little longer, or if it is so close that the results are disputed? Do you see any sort of unrest?
I don't see that, and I'll tell you why. officials of both parties that I have spoken with, as long as officials of the police that I have spoken with, are confident that such will not happen. This is not the first time Ghana has held elections that the results have been disputed and no violence came about. Political power has changed hands from the NDC, the ruling party, to the NPP, and from the NPP to the NDC. No violence occurred. It's rare to have violence in Ghanaian elections, especially after the reintroduction of constitutional rule in 1992.
Peter, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, that was VOA correspondent Peter Clotty there reporting for us from Ghana's capital of Accra. In South Africa, 2 white men accused of forcing a black man into a coffin have been denied bail in court. A 20-second video circulated on social media shows Willem Oosthuizen and Theo Jackson forcing victim Mlotshwa into the coffin. One of the accused is shown pushing a lid on Mlotshwa's head while the other threatens to set the casket alight. The accused claim Mlotshwa was trespassing on their farm in Middelburg, Mpumalanga, but the judge in the case described the incident as a brutal act of racism. The video has caused public outrage and laid bare the racial tensions that persist in South Africa more than 2 decades after the fall of racial apartheid. The case will resume in January next year. To Gambia now, and the army chief there has reportedly pledged allegiance to President-elect Adama Barrow. A spokesperson for Barrow says General Badje called Barrow to congratulate him on his victory and offer his support. There are high hopes that Gambia will see its first peaceful change of power in more than half a century. The military offers no official confirmation of the army chief's pledge. Barrow beat incumbent Yahya Jammeh in last Thursday's election. Jammeh, who had promised he would rule Gambia for 1 billion years, shocked Gambians when he conceded to the self-made real estate developer who was once a security guard in London. Jammeh has called Barrow to congratulate him, but the 2 men have not met since the vote. The Constitution says Jammeh must hand over power within a month of the poll. In the United States, President-elect Donald Trump has chosen Oklahoma Attorney General Scott Pruitt to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. Pruitt is a key critic of President Barack Obama's plan to address climate change by slashing carbon emissions from the nation's power plants. Pruitt is among officials from 27 states who filed a lawsuit in January seeking to block the Clean Power Plan, which calls for states to come up with ways to reduce overall emissions by 32% by 2030. Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, has brushed off criticism of Pruitt's environmental record.
Well, in Trump world, we're very accustomed to the naysayers and the critics. So, and we know some people are still running a permanent campaign, but Attorney General Pruitt has great qualifications and a good record as the AG of Oklahoma. And there were a number of qualified candidates for that particular position that the president-elect interviewed. And he settled on Attorney General Pruitt, and we'll look forward to the confirmation hearings.
Well, Pruitt has expressed skepticism about climate change. He and Alabama Attorney General Luther Strange wrote in National Review in May a scathing criticism of states that are pursuing legal action against companies disputing climate change science. In February, the Supreme Court issued an order halting the rules from going into effect while the legal challenge was ongoing. U.S. President elect Donald Trump has stepped up his cabinet selection process. This week, Trump and transition officials announced his choices to head defense, environment, homeland security and housing, as well as the U.S. ambassador to China. Some of his latest picks have sparked renewed controversy, as did earlier ones. VOA's Latita Hoke reports.
Scott Pruitt, Oklahoma State Attorney General, known as a supporter of the fossil fuel industry, is expected to lead the Environmental Protection Agency. Pruitt has been criticized for expressing skepticism about global warming, despite scientific evidence that human activity is contributing to climate change. He has led a legal battle against President Barack Obama's climate change policies. Many consider his selection as controversial as the selection of neurosurgeon Ben Carson to head the Department of Housing and Urban Development. But Trump thinks differently.
I believe we're in the process of putting together one of the all-time great cabinets that has ever been assembled in our nation's history.
Retired Marine General John Kelly, a veteran of the Iraq War, is to become new Homeland Security Chief. He will be in charge of combating terrorism and implementing Trump's promised crackdown on illegal immigration. On Wednesday, Trump met with Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, who gave him a letter signed by 14 U.S. city mayors asking him to protect undocumented foreign students.
They're trying to achieve the American dream. No fault of their own. Their parents came here. They are something we should hold up and embrace.
Later in the day, the president-elect held talks with wrestling executive Linda McMahon, who is expected to be offered the leadership of the Small Business Administration.
We talked about business and entrepreneurs and creating jobs, and we talked about SBA, and so we had a really good conversation.
Trump is meeting Iowa Governor Terry Branstad on Thursday to offer him the post of next U.S. ambassador to China. The long-serving Republican governor has extensive ties to China and friendship with its president Xi Jinping. His selection has wider approval than some of Trump's other picks. The transition team says more cabinet members will be selected next week. Trump has said he has narrowed down the list of candidates for the most important cabinet post, Secretary of State, and that a former critic, one-time Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney, remains on it. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, as we reported, Trump formally announced his pick for Secretary of Defense this week, retired Marine General James Mattis. Mattis served as head of U.S. Central Command, which carries out U.S. operations in the Middle East. With more, here's VOA's Pentagon correspondent, Carla Babb.
The president-elect's cabinet pick for Secretary of Defense is retired Marine General James Mad Dog Mattis. Mattis has served as the commander of U.S. Central Command, which carries out U.S. operations in the Middle East, and the Supreme Allied Commander of NATO forces. His tenacity against enemy forces in Afghanistan and Iraq earned him both the Mad Dog nickname and respect from military peers.
Good to see you all.
Well, he's a soldier or Marine's Marine. I'm sure that's what he would say. And I first met him in Nangarhar province in Afghanistan, where we were in a tough fight in 2006. And he's a very inspirational leader. I know he inspired me.
Experts note that Mattis is both a general and a scholar.
He's thought of as one of the best read, best informed, and most experienced generals of his generation.
Michael O'Hanlon of the Brookings Institution in Washington says he believes Mattis's background and knowledge has made him more practical than most on the potential for military power and its limitations.
It's actually good that someone with Mattis's battlefield credibility and experience is advising Donald Trump, because Donald Trump will listen to that person, I believe, and will be more inclined to hear an argument for restraint in the use of force from someone like General Mattis.
Before Mattis can be confirmed, Congress will have to pass an exception to a law that prohibits generals from serving as Secretary of Defense until they've been retired for 7 years. Mattis has been retired for just 3. The law is meant to create space between military service and civilian directorship of the department. Congress has made one exception to the law, allowing World War II-era General George Marshall to serve as Secretary of Defense in 1950. Carla Babb, VOA News, The Pentagon.
Well, at a thank-you rally for his supporters near Fort Bragg, North Carolina, Trump called for an end to the destructive cycle of intervention and chaos, as he put it. That struck some commentators as a call for non-interventionist approach to world affairs. But as VOA's Masood Farivar reports, Trump's foreign policy remains a work in progress.
As he continued his post-election victory lap across the country, President-elect Trump returned to 2 often repeated themes from his campaign.
We will stop racing to topple foreign, and you understand this, foreign regimes that we know nothing about, that we shouldn't be involved with. Instead, our focus must be on defeating terrorism and destroying ISIS. And we will.
To loud cheers from supporters, Trump introduced his choice for defense secretary, retired General James Mad Dog Mattis, and reaffirmed another campaign pledge, rebuilding America's depleted military. But the jubilant president-elect also threw what appeared to be an olive branch at NATO members still jittery over Trump's campaign vitriol about free-riding allies.
We won't forget it. We want to strengthen all friendships and seek out new friendships.
Trump's pledge to end the destructive cycle of intervention and chaos struck some observers as a call for a non-interventionist foreign policy. But that is an oversimplification, says foreign policy expert Michael O'Hanlon.
Well, I think it's region by region. So, for example, Trump has said he wants to destroy ISIS. That doesn't sound very non-interventionist to me.
On the campaign trail, Trump repeatedly assailed Democratic rival Hillary Clinton for supporting military interventions in Iraq and Libya, policies he blamed for instability and terrorism in the region. Rather than a large-scale military intervention, Trump favors limited strikes against ISIS.
In other words, it may rely more on specific strikes, destroying certain targets, limiting the American presence on the ground.
Trump's nomination of Mattis, a seasoned military leader with deep experience working with NATO, is a reassuring signal to foreign policy leaders and allies.
In the 1 month since he's been elected, he has tempered his previous disdain for many alliances, and he's been, frankly, more careful in almost every single message he sent, especially with his choice of General Mattis to head the Pentagon.
But Trump has named others with hawkish views to senior posts. And with his inauguration less than 2 months away, experts say his foreign policy remains a work in progress. Milar Sega for Masood Farivar, VOA News, Washington.
Well, we want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover here. Please join the conversation on Facebook. The address there is Africa 54. And you can check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Well, coming up after the break, focusing on education to help combat HIV/AIDS. Do stay with us.
How do you see the world?
I see countries in turmoil.
I see our planet changing.
I see people at peace.
No matter how you see the world, you'll get an unbiased and uncensored view of it on Voice of America. On television, radio, online, and mobile. In more than 40 languages all day, every day. Millions of people tune us in.
How do I see the world? On Voice of America.
Well, it's time now for our health report, and joining us is Africa 54's health correspondent, Lenore Madu, to tell us how to ward off certain diseases. Lenore?
Hello, Hedy. Hello, everyone. Well, a new study suggests that a handful of nuts a day can stave off various diseases. Writing in the journal BMC Medicine, researchers from Imperial College London and the Norwegian University of Science and Technology analyzed 29 previous studies from around the world on the health benefits of nuts. The research suggests at least 20 grams per day of nuts, such as walnuts, pecans, and peanuts, can cut people's risk of coronary heart disease by nearly a third, the risk of cancer by 15%, and the risk of premature death by 22%, as they are high in fiber, magnesium, and polyunsaturated fats. Nuts also reduce the risk of dying from respiratory disease and reduce the risk of diabetes by nearly 40%. Scientists have discovered more than 150 HIV-infected children in South Africa who have not developed AIDS, despite high levels of the virus in their blood, calling them non-progressors. The children aged 5 and older were infected in the womb and remain healthy even without receiving antiviral treatment. In most patients, HIV cripples the immune system by infecting CD4 T cells that respond to the viral threat. The children's T cells were found to have low levels of the receptor protein CCR5, on which the HIV virus attaches to enter the cell. Fewer particles get in, resulting in fewer cells dying. The unique defense method basically renders the virus incapable of infecting target cells. The study was published in the journal Science Translational Medicine. We remain in South Africa, where women are grappling with the social stigma attached to HIV. But community support groups and easier access to treatment are starting to change things. 22-year-old Clementine Mogameledi was born with HIV. She contracted the virus through mother-to-child transmission. It was difficult for her as a young girl to accept her status because of what people will say.
It was very hard for me to accept my condition. I thought everyone could see that I was HIV positive. It was hard, however. After that experience, I realized that this disease is common, and we were also taught about it at school. Since then, I noticed changes, and that's when I became free. And I ended up finding a best friend, and I told her about my HIV status, and she supported me.
Government statistics in South Africa show that HIV infections among adolescent girls and young women between the ages of 15 to 24 are 4 times higher than men of the same age group. This, despite a variety of educational campaigns to prevent infection. External as well as internal stigma remains one of the main challenges for those living with the condition. Dr. Ramnik Aluwalia is director of head of the Higher Education HIV/AIDS program. The initiative launched community support groups that assist with easy access to treatment around rural areas in the province of KwaZulu-Natal.
We have to find more innovative ways of destigmatizing the disease. So this is one way of bringing tests close to the community, not forcing them to go and stand in the long queue where ARVs are, long queues where HIV is. Do you understand me? So we have to label to subtly calm down the word HIV from the lives of our people.
Chipiso Makume is a counselor at the Lombano Sanctuary, a hospice that looks after HIV-positive kids.
Largely, there's a lack of understanding around how HIV is transmitted, and so a lot of the times women are seen as promiscuous, whereas perhaps then they got it through mother-child transmission, which is a lot of the cases that we see here. It's not any fault of the child or the adolescent, but it's largely because when the mothers were pregnant with them, they weren't aware that they were HIV positive.
Earlier this year, South Africa's Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, launched a 3-year campaign called She Conquers. The campaign, which is inspired by HIV-positive women who rise above and conquer various HIV-related challenges, is aimed at raising awareness and furthermore an attempt to realize their vision of eliminating new infections by 2020. And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Back to you, Haiti.
Thank you so much, Lenore. Be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. We're going to take a short break, and still to come here on Africa 54, games, tweets and magazine covers, more victories for U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's tweeting has long been a topic of conversation. Well, a group of developers in Finland are lampooning what they see as Trump's controversial stance on scientific topics the only way they know how, a Trump-themed game. Trump versus Science lets gamers blast contentious Trump Twitter posts by hurling false symbols at them. The game involves smashing a touch screen at certain times. Trump versus Science has recorded over 5 million interactions since its launch earlier this year. Well, in other Trump news, the U.S. president-elect has been named as Time magazine's Person of the Year. Time managing editor says the choice this year was straightforward. Time gives the title to the person who has had the greatest influence on events for better or worse. Trump went from fiery underdog in the race for the Republican presidential nomination to defeating Democratic challenger Hillary Clinton in the November 8th election. And that is what is trending today. Well, the American state of Tennessee is home to some famous music venues. In the far west of the state, Beale Street in the heart of Memphis is renowned for its blues music. In Middle Tennessee, there's the Ryman Auditorium, often referred to as the Mother Church of country music. In more recent years, the 700-acre Bonnaroo Music Festival site has garnered international recognition. Now, while it may not be quite as famous, reporter Mike Osborne recently discovered that Tennessee is also home to one of the world's most unusual music venues.
The rolling hills of Tennessee's Cumberland Plateau are home to some of the nation's most beautiful and productive fields and forests. Underneath those fields is a very different kind of beauty. On most Saturdays, hundreds of music fans from all over the world trek a kilometer into the Cumberland Cavern to enjoy an American music form 110 meters below ground. Bluegrass Underground was launched in 2008. The show features artists playing so-called American roots music developed by immigrants from the British Isles who settled in the hills above in the late 18th century. The performances are staged in a large cavern called the Volcano Room. The acoustics are nearly perfect, a fact not lost on Tennessee music promoter Todd Mayo.
Inside the cave, we took the tour, and you get down into the Volcano Room, and there's this giant chandelier. And I looked up, and I looked around, and I said to the tour guide, do y'all have live music around here? And she said, no, but that'd be a good idea. And it just sort of all came to me.
More than 180,000 guests later, Bluegrass Underground is gathering an international following.
We've had people from Ireland and Japan, and they literally said they came to America. The impetus was to come to this cave and to see this show.
As the audience filed out of the cave, bluegrass fan Gwen Lanius said the music seemed to fit the setting.
The bluegrass that we saw today, it kind of blended. It might not be a venue for all kinds of music, but it was certainly appropriate for the day.
Austin Thompson, lead singer of the Way Down Wanderers, says the cave setting also matched the nature-themed songs his group often performs. He was impressed as well with the cave's natural acoustics.
Yeah, I thought it was really great. I mean, on both sides of the spectrum, being on stage and as a listener in the audience, it's really full sound.
Todd Mayo says he hopes to give music fans who attend the show an even fuller experience in the near future. He wants to develop a weekend-long Tennessee program that would include visiting some of the state's many scenic parks and forests. For VOA News, I'm Mike Osborne in Cumberland Caverns, Tennessee.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words, where we talk about words in the news.
You usually hear this word in connection with military or spy stories.
Reconnaissance.
The U.S. military is moving a range of assets into the region to help Iraqi security forces counter ISIL. Dozens of reconnaissance flights are being conducted daily. The first of several hundred advisors are arriving in Iraq to assess the situation. Some analysts say U.S. air power will be needed to stop the jihadis.
Reconnaissance is the gathering of information a military does to learn about enemy positions.
It can include flying over the enemy or using people on the ground to get information.
So the next time you hear the word reconnaissance, you will know what this news word means.